Immigration is a hot topic nowadays, and it tends to polarize people, communities, and even the world. But what is a Stoic view? And how can we apply Stoicism to make this difficult concept and to understand it better, to make more unity and peace in the world? The Via Stoica Podcast with Brendan and Benny. Powered by viastoica.com, your home for coaching, workshops, quotes, and Stoic content that inspires. Welcome to the Via Stoica Podcast. I'm your host, Benny, and today we're going to address a topic that might be a little bit difficult for some people to look into, to discuss, to hear, but I want to look at it from a Stoic view. Today we're going to talk about immigration, what it is, again, from a Stoic view, but also to see how we can deal with it better from our perspective as human beings and as citizens of the world, instead of looking at it from our countries and all these different aspects, but also understanding the fears and the emotions that come with it. So let's start with a deep dive into this topic, and let's really see what does it mean, and how can Stoic philosophy help us deal with this better. Because in this world nowadays, we see so much fear and hatred. And when we talk about immigration, a lot of people, they already start to tense up and start to become fearful and only have specific images in mind. And those are usually not very good. So I think Stoic philosophy has a lot to offer for us here in this topic. And again, if I might say things that you might not agree with, but leave them in the comments, right? That's why we want to have this discourse. And if you do agree with me, share it as well. Like this podcast and leave a rating, if you will. And we're just going to try and look at it from a Stoic perspective. And I might miss some points here or there. I'm not an expert in immigration, but I do have a view of this as someone who has traveled, who has migrated to other countries, who's lived in these countries and has dealt with immigration and with people from different cultures from all over the world. But I also understand that there's so many people who are still afraid of the word immigration and immigrants and what that means. But let's look at it through a Stoic lens, how we can find a better way of dealing with it. I wanted to start first with looking at some definitions here, just to kind of see what we're talking about. So first we have migration. Migration is pretty much the movement of people, right, from one place to another. This could be in a country, this could be in different countries, internationally, all over the globe, for long term, for short term. Basically, we're talking about migration, right? The movement of people. But we can see this also with the big migration in the African countries and other places. So animals have these same things, right? They're moving usually with the seasons, with the climates, with everything else, with the natural cycle, and they follow them every year throughout their lives, right? But for us, we've kind of lost that connection with these cycles, and we just move wherever we want. And as someone who travels a lot, I definitely know how that feels, and I do sometimes want to travel along with the seasons. But hey, that's not always what fate has in store for me. So that's migration. When we look at immigration, and we have emigration, right? So we have immigration. That means that someone is entering the country. So we have to think about you are being in a country and other people enter that country from abroad, right? Again, they're coming inside. Emigration is the opposite, where you are in a country and you're leaving. You are going to another country. So then you become an immigrant for the country that you're going to. We also have different kinds of immigration. Usually it's work, it's study, as we've seen some statistics. 3%, I think in 2023, 73% of immigration in the US was study, work related. And that's all perfectly legal. You get all the stamps. You have refugee, you have asylum seekers, you have all these other types of immigration who are looking for a safer place to live, either because of their backgrounds, their religions, all of these things that make it unsafe for them to stay in the country that they're in at the moment, at that time. And there's also illegal immigration, right? Irregular and illegal immigration, which is entry in a country without any legal authorization, where they haven't gone through customs, or they just went into a country without having stamped or without having passed the legal ways that other people do as well. So now that we know a little bit more about what we're talking about, I wanted to look at some of the stats, right? There's so many people who travel around, who move around for study, for work, for looking for better opportunities. And something that I've seen throughout my life and also throughout my travels is that at a basic level, all humans want the same, right? We want to have a peaceful, we want to have a good and good quality of life for us and for the people around us, right? That's for them. And I'm not talking about any of the extremes here. I'm just talking about normal, common people like us, right? We're not talking about any, because there's always going to be extremes on the fringes, but the largest part of the people, at least that I've seen in many of the countries that I've visited, are very welcoming. They're very welcome you with open arms. And I've been to many countries. I've seen it in the US, I've seen it in Africa, I've seen it in Asia, in South America. They're so welcoming, and most people just want to have a safe, peaceful, good life for them and for the others. And I think that that's something that we've got to remember from the offset, from this conversation, whatever your feelings are about this. And they want to have a better life for them, right? Especially if you come and if you live in a country where the options are reduced, the economic and the social climates are worse, or maybe you're in danger. You want to find a better way to live. But when we see like when we look, for example, in the EU, we have about 6 to 7% is that illegal immigration, which is, and this is from the entire immigration scale, right? So that's a tiny amount. And from that, maybe even less are not good actors, right? They might do bad things, but the problem is that they are usually highlighted in the news, and those are the things that we see, while there's so many others who want to contribute, who want to be part of a society, or just at least to kind of live in a safe place, right? And I think that that's something that we've got to keep in mind as well when we talk about topics like this, that usually the things that we see highlighted in the news are the extreme cases, are the ones that are on the fringes, while there's so many others who suffer from those few because they create such a negative stigma on the rest. Of the immigrants who go to a country. And we'll look at how the Stoics view about this as well, and see how we can deal with some of these things. And we have some really good numbers from the UK, right? In 2024, we had 35% who went there for study, 35 for work. We had 13 asylum seekers, and for family reunification, and 7% humanitarian. So we have about 10% illegal. So it's still, again, a small number, right? Anyway, when we start to look at the Stoic idea behind this, I wanted to look at it from a few different perspectives here, a few different sides. And I wanted to start with the physics side of it, right? The natural, um, um, how we are in the natural connection with life and everything else, the physics side of it, and the cosmology part of the philosophy. From that point, for the Stoics, in Stoic philosophy, immigration isn't an issue, doesn't exist. Migration does, right? Movement from here to there. But when we look at it from a cosmic point of view, for a Stoic, we're all citizens of the world. Diogenes, the cynic, he was the one who coined cosmopolitan, right? But we can see from others who say, like, when someone asks you where you're from, don't answer them, I'm from Athens, I'm from Crete, I'm from the world. I'm a world citizen. And I think that that's something where the Stoics would really hone in on. If someone asks, is like, oh, these are immigrants, these are immigrants. It's like, no, we're all part of one big globe. And that's something that we tend to forget. And when we look at our human species, we are not different at all. I remember I think it might have been Neil deGrasse Tyson. If aliens were to come and visit us from Earth, he would first of all look at all human beings as all the same, exactly the same, but even mammals, even all the other animals, if we look at how many similarities we have physically, it always strikes to me like, from an elephant to a dog to cows, they all have eyelashes, we all eat with a mouth, we all have those same kind of basic principles of how we consume and how we live and how we keep ourselves here in the earth and the world. For me, that we human beings have a special gift of having this reason and logic, but physically we are not that different from all the other mammals around. And that's something that we've got to keep in mind, right? So, we share, and, with most people, we share our reason, we share our logic, we have the same ideas about life. We live, we're looking for the same basic needs, food, shelter, safety, all of those things. And even the external things that we're looking for, we are all chasing the same. And that's part of how we are ingrained with life and what we think is a successful life and how we want to live. The problem is that it's not always not equally divided all over the world. And I think that that's something that we've got to there's work for us to do there. But when we look at it from a cosmological side point of view, from the Stoics, we are all pretty much the same, right? And we can look at it from an ethics side. And first we have the virtue ethics, to just be a good person. That counts for everyone. If everybody were a good person, then all of this wasn't an issue, right? And we wouldn't even be talking about this. But there are people who aren't using their reason or logic, or they don't know what the right thing to do is. So they do things that go against the populace. They go against the safety of others, and all of these things. So that's where we've got to really make sure that we are, from our own point of view, being the best person we can, and then we can inspire, we can set the right example for others. But what I really wanted to look into for this one was the role ethics. Then it reminds me of um, the expanding circles that Hierocles set out, right? I think he was a second century Stoic philosopher, and he wrote a few essays, I guess, or yeah, he wrote some letters about these circles, how they expand, and what that means for us. Again, he starts with the self, right? And then he goes outward to close family and friends. Then he goes to the community, society, and then we can go expand to countries, and we can. But at the end, the final one was the logos, right? The cosmos, because that's what we're all part of. And there was this interconnection between all of them, where we have to work from the inside out, but also from the outside in. It's all overflowing. And if we do it right, then yes, we can still identify these different circles, but we will always remember that we're all part of the same cosmos, of the same logos. And that's how we can then treat everybody else with the same respect that we should give everyone. And it would also signify that we would have to identify strangers as kin, right, as our brothers and our sisters, as the same. And that's something that is missing because of many things, and we will look at it as well. But in this role ethics, we also have to remind ourselves what role that we are playing. If we're an immigrant, if we are someone who is a native, or who is used to lived in a country from birth, and sometimes that's even forgotten, right? Sometimes we identify people because they look different from us as someone who's an immigrant, but they might have lived in a country for the entire life. Again, those assumptions are so easily made, and for us, the most important thing is in this role is to ask ourselves, hey, what should I be doing here? Am I allowed to, or do I possess the right knowledge to make certain judgments, to put certain labels on other people, to, if someone does a bad thing, to immediately put everybody else with the same kind of, I don't know, call it features, call it, backgrounds, call it whatever, to put them on the same label. And for us, it's really important to keep and to judge people on their personal behaviors, right? To put everybody as, okay, you know what? You're an individual. If your behavior is correct, and hey, you are my brother or sister. And even if it's not correct, then I will try to instruct you, as Marcus Aurelius says, either to endure you, or if you are a danger to others, to protect them from doing so. But at the end of the day, we're all kin, right? We're all one big family here on this earth. And we tend to forget about that a little bit. And our role should be to think about what is my role in each specific situation? What should I be doing here? What should I be doing there? How should I treat these other people? How should I treat them? And at the end of the day, the Stoics say, treat everybody as your family, right? But there's closer connection. And we'll look into that a little bit, of how the differences, and how we look at where do we put those lines, and what are the differentiators between everybody. Now, and that's a little bit where we come with the logic part of it, right? We put labels on everything, and we try to put everybody in specific boxes, right? Because our human mind is very prone to think in patterns, to recognize these things, and we want to make it easier for ourselves to label everybody as maybe for the color of their skin, the religion, the language that they speak, the food that they eat, the cultures that they have, the music that they listen to, right? So for us, it's very easy. Well, it's easy, but it's also very convenient and comfortable to do so. To see if someone wears specific kind of clothes, it's like, oh, you belong to this. Oh, if someone speaks a specific language, oh, you belong to here. Religion, you belong to here. And, language. And this is also a positive thing about the diversity of the world, where we speak different languages, where we have different cultures, that enriches life. And instead of rejecting it, we should embrace it. But these are also the things that separate us, or tend to separate us from others, right? It's like, oh, I don't speak this language, so those are foreign to me. instead of trying to learn the language, instead of trying to be interested, try to understand where they're coming from, we tend to reject it and close the door because we don't know them. The same with cultures. I've had the privilege to travel to many places, and some places they eat with their hands. Yes, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm the West. I've always been, I've always had a knife and fork and a spoon to eat. But with the hands, there's so many extra benefits to it. You can feel how hot or cold the food is. You can feel the texture. You can get so much more connected to the food. So why is that a bad thing? And some people, they look at it as like, oh, you're eating with your hands, or maybe with chopsticks. Right, I've used chopstick many times, and why? Because it slows my eating down. With a fork or a spoon, I just gulp it in. But with chopsticks, it's one by one. It's little pieces. It's more enjoyable. And with knife and fork, there's nothing bad about it. But these are the differences. There's nothing good or bad about it. It's just the cultural habits that we formed in these different places. And for me, that's something enriching. That's something great. If you learn to see how other people live instead of judging it directly and saying this is bad because I don't know it, that's where we create these divides. And the Stoics, they would want to break those divides because we're all the same. And I remember an essay by Michel Montaigne. He talked about was it the Crusaders? Not really Crusade, but the like Christopher Columbus and all of them who went to the Americas, and they came back and described them. Michel Montaigne is like, maybe we are the savages here in the West. If you see how they live, how they are connected with nature, how they use all of these things, and look at us with the in the 16th, 17th century when they are focusing on money and decadence and all of these things and creating a bigger divide monetarily in their countries. Back there, they were living off the nature. They were all together as families and doing, just being united. So it's very easy for us to label others in a specific way. And just because we don't know what's happening there, we tend to judge it as foreign, as bad, as well, strange, it's nothing positive. And then when people come here, one of our fears is that our culture then has to go, right? Our culture has to leave instead of we can say, well, let's enrich our own culture by adding these things. But we'll look into that a little bit more. Like one example, one of the quotes to kind of build on this at this moment is a quote by Marcus Aurelius. He mentions in book 6, 44, almost at the end, he says, "My city and state are Rome, as Antoninus, but as a human being, the world. So for me, good can only mean what's good for both communities." And I think that that's where we start to see how the Stoics would practice this, right? And obviously, Marcus Aurelius is the emperor of Rome, and he is fighting the Germanic tribes in the north, trying to defend his Rome. And for whatever reasons, would he have liked to have been doing that? I think that was part of his duty, and he saw that as his role as the emperor to defend Rome, right? Because that was a civilized world, and they saw the Germanic tribes as barbarians, right? And even Epictetus says, never to say of anyone that he's a barbarian, but he's a fellow human being. So in that sense, kind of, it contradicts the fighting in the north, right? But again, Marcus Aurelius was also a flawed human being, and that's what you can read in the meditations, where he's just, criticizing and struggling with all of these things. But he understands the fact that we do have different, again, roles. We do have different positions. We have a position in a family, in a country, but moreover in the world. And we need to make sure that we do right to all of these positions, to all of these places that we occupy. So if we are doing good for the world, then it's going to be good for the smaller ones, for the smaller parts that we play a role in. And Marcus Aurelius says, if it's good for the bee, it's good for the hive, right? If it's good for me, it's good for everybody else. And if it's good for everybody else, it should be good for me as well. That might not mean that it's always in line with what we want or desire or what we wish to avoid. And again, sometimes it means that if we want to create a better place for everybody in the world, some people might have to take a step back from all the luxuries and all the things that we have and make sure that it's divided a little bit better, the resources that we have. The money, whatever, the food, all of these things. If it's divided in more places, and if we can elevate the living standard, then people don't need to move as much as they do because they want to have a better life. And that's something that we've got to keep in mind, not just because we want to keep making progress, we want to keep making advancements, and we want to live more and more and better and better. No, if we learn to have enough, if we learn to say, like, this is a good quality of life, let's try to give this to everybody else first before we start advancing to the next level. And I think that that's what the Stoics would look at now. They would see the disparity between wealth and luxury, but just basic common human needs. It's already ridiculous to see that some people, countries, people don't even have a home, running water, electricity, all of the things that we take for granted. And even internet right now is one of those commodities that we think we need. Now, I think that that's where the Stoics would start with addressing any of these problems with immigration. And the problem is that for most people, taking a step back, removing some of the luxuries, that hurts. That's a painful act to do. We don't want to give in. We don't want to give up. We want to be winners. We don't want to share things as much as we think we do. But that's where we need to start, right? If we look at Marcus Aurelius, when he does think about his adopted father, Antoninus, he starts with the word compassion. It's one of the lessons that he taught him. And there's some fears, with immigration. And, we have, for example, the economic competition that jobs and wages and the welfare is reduced because of the immigration, because of people come over. But a lot of the times the people who come to I'm from the Netherlands, people from Turkey, from Morocco, they came here many decades ago to help out to do the jobs that we didn't want to do, and that still is the case, right? For example, in the Netherlands, if you are not in university or have such a high degree, then people will look down on you. So not a lot of people do the manual labor, the crafts, all of these things. And that's where a lot of immigrants come in to do those jobs that we don't want to do. Well, those are very honorable jobs to do. In fact, that's what society is built on. A lot of the jobs that require the PhDs, the masters, all the manager, the titles, all of these things that can be removed within an instant. But if you need a plumber, if you need an electrician, if you need a builder, then you're going to need it, right? So a lot of the jobs that we think is being taken are the jobs that people don't want to be doing. And at the end of the day, we are aiming for more money in these things. Epictetus says these are externals. We've got to focus on what really matters, right? We've got to try to do the right thing. And if people come here to do jobs that we don't want to do, respect them. Give them the time and the honor that they need, because they're keeping our world active and possible to live in. Or do it yourself, right? Go and do those jobs if you want to, if you don't have a job. Now, the cultural changes as well. This is something that I see a lot in social media and just on the politics, where people are fearful of losing their identity, of losing their culture, right? Because they see things on TV, it's like, oh, they're taking over. Look at all of this. But the problem is that a lot of the news items, a lot of these things that you see on social media, they're all zoomed in on this tiny thing that's happening, and they're making it so big that it's instilling fear in people to lose their culture. I think people have lost, especially in the West, a lot of people have lost their culture already just because of the chasing of externals, of always wanting more. Well, if you look at, I come from a Christian family, and the basic ideas there are very aligned with Stoicism. Be kind to each other, support each other, safety, be a good person, all of those things. But because we are so fed by these images that show that, no, they're taking over, instead of looking at it as something that can enrich your life, talk to the people, ask, like, hey, what are you doing? Again, I went to Morocco many times. I've done the Ramadan a few times. It's a very interesting thing to do. You can learn a lot about your body, but you can also learn about how the community of people, the connection there, they all help each other, right? It's all one big unity, and you know what you're going through, you know what you're doing. If you're doing it for the right reasons. And as long as you don't impose it on other people, you can do all the religious things that you want. As long as you respect other people, maybe you not want to do it. And that goes both ways. That goes for everyone. I think that that's a common thing that we should be doing. Now, there's also the security and crime when different cultures collide, if you will, or come together. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Then the ways of living are different, and we all have to learn and teach. And yes, there are bad actors in it, right? But there's also a lot of bad actors in the countries to begin with. From my side, from the Netherlands, so many people who do bad things as well, but that's not really being shown. But why? Because it's not sensational enough. It's always easier and nicer to show an immigrant doing something bad than, for example, a Dutch person, or maybe an American, or a British person. It's always easier to show that. Why? Because it gives people a specific way of looking at it. It gives people, it feeds in that fear that we wanted to do. But fear is a destructive passion, right? Again, when we talk about the good emotions and the bad emotions, fear is a destructive one. So ask yourself, let's first see what's real here. What's really happening here? Is this everyone? maybe there are good immigrants as well. Maybe there are immigrants that can help again, that can enrich my life, that I can learn something from, that can expand my view, my knowledge. That's what we really want to look for. Instead of putting a stigma on everyone because of some bad actors, maybe we should put the stigma on us. And I think that that's where we've got to start, right? And if they do wrong, if they come here and if they come to your place, then instead of antagonizing them, instead of looking at them negative and labeling them as criminals, maybe we can educate each other. I think education is the best tool to really bring people together. We do things differently. How do you do things? Let's come together. Let's share a meal. Let's see how you eat. Let's see how you practice your religion. Let's see how you think. Let's see how you do these things, and let's come together and let's ask questions instead of pushing each other away. Wrongdoing is nothing, wrong things or bad things, if we will, is not nothing nationally, right? It's human being, it's humans. It's not a property of a nationality or a religion. It's just failure to use reason and logic. Now, as we start to wrap this up, and or maybe you have some comments. Maybe I've said some things here in this episode that you didn't agree with, or maybe you wanted me to expand on. And sometimes these episodes I tend to ramble a little bit, but this is also something that is close to my heart as someone who travels, as someone who's been around the world and sees that the world is one big place for all of us. And I was on an island in the Atlantic, a Spanish island, and I was like, oh wow, I'm floating here on this island. Well, floating, I'm here on this island in the middle of the ocean. And then I expanded the view, right? The view from above, Marcus Aurelius talks about, is like we're all floating on this rock through space, all of us together. And I think that that's something that we can practice all a little bit more. The view from above, to see, if you really want to look at humans, just zoom out, and we're all just in this boat together. And the more we zoom out, the more we can find that compassion and companionship in this predicament that we all are in. Instead of fighting each other for pieces of land, for resources, for things that we don't really need but think we do, for this continuous comparison that we make, I think it's far better use of our energy if we try to come together and build that unity. And those are our responsibilities, right? It's our Stoic duty to apply justice in not of punishing the people who do wrong, but to justice in the sense of like what's fair for me, but what's fair for the rest of the world as well. And that's where that kind of talk about equality comes into place. And what does equality mean for me? It's about making sure that everybody has access to the most common basic human needs: shelter, food, water, healthcare, all of these things that really make the basic needs of a human being met. And that's not happening at the moment. Why? Because in some parts of the world, we need far more than other parts, and we think that we deserve it, that we are better than them, and that we need to harvest their resources and take all of that away from them. But if we take a step back and we can divide it better, many of the problems that we're facing right now would be gone. But we also have the responsibility to adhere the laws of countries, to adhere the laws of the world, right? Something that we've all commonly agreed on, laws in specific countries. If you go to a specific country, that's what I try to do when I go somewhere new. I try to learn the language, or at least try to understand it as much as I can, or respect it at least, because some languages are difficult to learn. To respect the culture, the food, whatever kind of habits that they have. I can respect it. I can join, I can learn, I can do all of these things. If I don't like it, I can leave, right? I can make that decision, but at least let me try, let me give it. But it's our responsibility to also adhere the laws of the countries that we go in, because that's been agreed upon as a society. And if you don't, then there's ways of, especially in a democratic way, there's ways of changing those. There's a way of trying to talk about it, right? And in some countries not. And again, that's our prerogative for many people, especially for someone in a privileged situation like me, to be able to travel, to go here and there, and other people can't, right? They want to come to these places because we have such a good life. Anyway, again, as we start to wrap this up, it's an intense topic to talk about, and I think one of the ways that we can really come together is first by education. Instead of seeing people as different, trying to see people as interesting, as some ways to enrich our own lives through their culture, through their ways of living. And we can see that, for example, again, in the Netherlands, if I go to the supermarket, there's foods from all over the world. So when I go travel, it's like, oh, wow, this is, I can taste it. I can get a little bit of a way of how people live. And I think that that's a great way to do and help people A lot of the times when people go to a new place, they feel like an alien, especially if people point at them, if people look at them funny, if people already label them as negative or as criminals. They will never be able to integrate. So integration comes from two parts, from the people who come and from the people who are there to really accept each other. And we've got to get rid of the fear-driven narratives, the fear-driven society, because that really sets people apart. If we start from fear, hatred, all of these bad emotions, the apathy that the Stoics talk, if we really start from there, then we can never have a dialogue. We can never have an exchange of knowledge, of culture. And that's really what we want. And then people say, yeah, but my culture is lost. We are living in a global society. Cultures are going to blend in and we're going to create new cultures altogether. And that's the way we want to move forward. Anyway, I think it is good to ask yourself, where do I stand on immigration, on migration, on being a global citizen, on enriching my life with the cultures and the ways of living from other people? And do I label people? Do I put them in a box and label them as good or bad? Or how do I do that? I think it is good to create a little bit more awareness of how we stand and how we view these things. Anyway, that's me for now. If you did like this episode, or if you didn't, please let me know. Leave a comment on the things. And I probably missed some things, and I'm probably maybe made some calls here or there that you don't agree with. Let me know, because I really want to know in the comments what you feel and how you think, and if you have questions or other parts that we want to address. So looking forward to hearing that. Do like this episode. This is the podcast. Share it with people if you think that they can use it. And for now, thank you very much. If you do need some more resources, go to viastoica.com. And if you're struggling with this and you want to have a chat, you can book a free 30-minute consultation with me and we can talk about that. So for now, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Via Stoica Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review. Your feedback will help us reach more like-minded people on the journey to self-improvement. If you want to get in touch with us or find more information, you can go to viastoica.com, your one-stop platform for all things Stoicism and living better. And remember, virtue is the only good.